Good evening. I'm Ginna Gordon, and I am the instigator and host of the Arts and Letters series for Art Presence, where we discuss words, the arts, and ideas with mostly local authors and artists. So tonight, I am really honored. This is Smooch Our Cat. This is a watercolor done by Anne Brooke, our guest tonight, who has devoted over 9 years to growing Art Presence from an idea to a community-supported artist cooperative gallery with loft studios, a gallery of gifts, classes, and more. Anne is the founder of Art Presence. She is a retired nurse, a teacher, a calligrapher, and artist. Here are a couple more of her images. Tonight we'll have a glimpse into Anne's early life with her artist father and a bit about her nursing career. But mostly we'll discuss Art Presence, its growth, and its function in the community as an educational resource, as well as a fine art gallery. Here's a couple of pictures of Anne's studio. So we'll also have a little short lesson in watercolor painting tonight, the Anne Brooke way. And this is where you could go, see, Smooch right there? You could go to Anne's studio and enjoy a class called Wine and Watercolor, and we'll discuss that with Anne in a moment. So Anne, join me, unmute yourself, and join me here now. Hi.
Am I here?
You are here.
Great.
Thanks for coming. This is wonderful.
It is wonderful. And first of all, I would like to say thank you so much to Ginna and David Gordon for their commitment to Art Presence Art Center and the fact that they have introduced us to this incredible arts and letters that I think is going to mean a great deal to the community and to the gallery and to all of our patrons. So thank you for doing this, and I'm delighted to be here. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. We're honored to be here with you. So it's a mutual admiration society. I would really like to start out by talking about your father.
Yes, I was very fortunate to have a father who was not only an artist, but an attorney and had a little bit of free time. So he made sure that he included me in setting up still lifes. When I got home from school, we would have something to do together. My grandfather lived with us, and so he would pose for the two of us, and it was incredible. He taught me a very, very classic method of drawing. And I have to tell you, as I got older and got into school, he would not allow me to take any classes, drawing or otherwise, because he was so afraid I would develop somebody else's style.
So wasn't he afraid that you would develop his style?
Well, no, because we were just drawing.
Ah.
And as I say, it was a very classic method. But at the same time, when I was maybe halfway through my nursing career, he sat me down and he said, you know, I've had a lot of criticism about the fact that I have not allowed you to take classes. How do you feel? And I said, well, I certainly know how to draw. So I look back on that. My grandfather, who was also an attorney and also an artist, was a judge in Michigan. And my husband and I went to Michigan and went to the Supreme Court, where his paintings are on the walls of the Supreme Court. And it's so good to see Brooke around the room as my grandfather. So I'm very proud of that.
And so did you go to nursing school and art school at the same time? How did you handle your career
Not at
choices?
the same time. I have a degree in both nursing and art, and I completed my art degree after the nursing degree. So, but it worked out really well for me as far as my nursing was concerned, because I worked in education for 17 years. One of the things that was interesting about that is I got exposed to many conferences about the adult learner. And one of the things I found about the adult learner was the worst possible thing you could do for them is waste their time. And that has done me well as far as my teaching of watercolor, so that I can work with people at the level or stage that they are coming to me with. So that helped a lot. Also, I was fortunate enough to be able to do the artwork for the department, pamphlets. It was interesting. I think I may have told you, Ginna, one time the pediatric department asked me to do a poster. Now, granted, this is a time when there weren't the computer apps available, and I did a large poster of meconium. Meconium is the different stools of newborn babies, and it has a tremendous impact on how the doctor will care for them. But I was sitting there doing these colors thinking, I am doing a poster of poop. Essentially, that's what I was doing. Anyway, my opportunities as a nurse were very fortunate in able to deal with the adult learner.
And when did you get more involved in teaching art?
I actually started teaching art while I was still nursing. I had people who were interested, so set up a little area in my own studio in Medford when we lived there, and began to teach there, and had wonderful success with that. So when I finally got to the stage where I was only working part-time, I managed an eye surgery center, the pre and post-op. I actually started teaching regular 6-week classes. And that's one of the reasons we're going to talk about it tonight, because after this incredible pandemic, I am so hoping to get back to the place where I can do that again. So that's why we're talking about it.
And so let's talk then about Art Presence itself, and how that came about. You told me yesterday that we are approaching the 10th anniversary.
Yes, we are.
And so let's just talk a little bit about how you've spent the last 10 or so years.
Well, the first part of it was a group of us, a group of local artists in Jacksonville. We started the Art Amble. And similar to what we're doing now with the Art Walk, but at the same time that we were doing that, trying to open up store situations and get people to stay open a little longer. When I say people, I mean businesses. Mm-hmm. So at the same time, the jail, the county jail, was empty. And I went on several occasions to the Historic Society, who happened to own the building at the time, asking them to please let us at least have a show or two in there, because we had lots of local artists who would love to do that, and turned down over and over again. And then the chamber had a show in the old county jail. They put burlap on the walls. They brought in hay bales and had a real hoedown of a party. And so I went back to them and I said, if they can do that, we should be able to have a show or two. And at that time, and I forget who said it to me, said, how would you like to lease it? And if I hadn't been sitting down, I would have fallen down. So we leased the building and made a lot of changes. I had the same group of people that I was working with on the Art Amble came in full force to work with me on redoing the building. And subsequent to that, we've had 5 grants that we've received and been able to upgrade and restore and make that place a really precious building.
It's a gem. It is a gem. It's a very sweet situation there. And where along the line in your process of getting involved like this with Jacksonville and creating things and doing things in the city of Jacksonville, did you come up with this idea of a coloring book?
You know, I may be prejudiced, but Jacksonville is a magical place. And I lost my husband, gosh, it's been 9 years ago. And if I'd been any place else, I never would have had the support and care that was given to the two of us while he was in the final stages of his life. And every time when you get to that sign, either on Bellinger Lane or Fifth Street, where you're reduced to 20 to 25 miles, I find myself taking a deep breath and almost relaxing to get back into this precious place. So I look at all these buildings and I thought I really want to do something like this. And then of course I met Ginna and David Gordon, who
Just so
are
happens.
publishers and who helped me put it together. It was probably a year-long adventure for me to do all the different drawings. Here's a picture of it right now. But
Yeah.
I hope you can see in that my love for Jacksonville, which I know just about every person in every business, and I see their hard work and I see what they've done for this town, and it just I hope you see it in the coloring book.
I love that you did the coloring book cover in colored pencils. So
It is really the best medium, and as far as being able to take it with you and so on.
yes.
But one of the things about a colored pencil, you only need 4 or 5 of them, because if you combine like a blue and a yellow, you can get a wonderful green. Or
Right.
you combine a red and a blue, you can get an incredible purple. You can see those here in the cover. I have used very few colors, just basically primary colors.
Uh-huh. That's wonderful. So the art, what was the first one called? The art
Amble.
Art Amble. And so
Yeah.
did that evolve into the art walk?
Well, we didn't do it for a lot of years, and we've only just done it. We started the art walk the year before the pandemic hit. And obviously we canceled it for all this time. And now here we are back again to do this art walk. We have a commitment from all the businesses, and we have now, I just got another one today, 13 artists who are interested in showing in different businesses. And of course, Art Presence is going to do everything they can to be involved and keep it going. In fact, right at the moment, I'm making 6 more yellow flags because this is what the businesses need to show the fact that they do have an artist in their midst. So I hope people will come into town and enjoy Jacksonville.
So talk a little bit about the cooperative artists, the fact of its being a co-op and what that means.
We are not completely a co-op. I have an incredible 9-person board who not advise advise me, but in their own rights are doing wonderful things for the gallery. You are included, as you are a board member, and the support of all the authors in our book area. A real honest to God co-op is one where the members participate in a very real way by taking on responsibilities like membership, like publicity, like grant writing, all of those different things. And we are spending this year trying to accomplish some of that so that we are more of a true co-op. The artists we have, and we have 36 of them, are members, and they show their art here, and they participate by sitting or docenting the gallery.
And do most co-ops or do co-ops have a board of directors?
Yes, they do have a buck stops here person, but they do have an advisory board. It takes on different forms. I've called art co-ops all over the United States, as far away as New London, Connecticut, to find out how they're doing and what they're doing. And a co-op seems to be the unless, like in Scottsdale, Arizona, you can have your own fine art gallery. A co-op seems to be the way that the majority of communities show their art. And of course, we're delighted to be able to do it the way we do it.
And it would you call the incoming artists, have they been juried or?
Absolutely. And that's our goal, is to have a fine art gallery, a premier fine art gallery. We don't, every single artist who presents their work usually has a website, and they are usually very professional. We don't, we take students to do special art exhibits, but all of these are professional artists who come from all over the Rogue Valley and Grants Pass, and show their work here. So it is definitely juried, and the board does the jurying.
Mm-hmm. And it is for Jackson and all of Jackson County, correct?
All over. We would, Jackson, Josephine, Douglas, any of those places, we would be delighted. But it would be difficult for people to, to accomplish their responsibilities to the gallery if they're too far away.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get back then to the Jacksonville Art Walk. And tell me about your when it starts and what the plan basically is going to be.
We are going to have an art walk every second Saturday through October, fingers crossed. And you identify those places by a yellow flag that is supposed to be put into their flagpole. And as I say, hopefully the artists will be accepted, and people will come in and view them. I don't know, because of the pandemic, how many businesses are inviting wineries, but that's what we used to do. You'd have a winery and some finger foods. As I was telling you yesterday, I don't call it hors d'oeuvres because I don't know how to spell it. So it's either finger foods or canapes or something like that.
Appetizers.
Appetizers, there you go. And we're doing the same. We're the last reception that we had for the Calligraphers Guild, we had half of it outside and half of it inside, so that people who didn't feel comfortable coming in and having a glass of wine or a cookie or whatever didn't have to. So it's still a little bit up in the air, and I'm hoping that again, fingers crossed, that we don't have to close down again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it needs to happen in Jacksonville.
Yeah, it's a great event. Okay, so I know that something very close to your heart is art education.
Yes.
And I also happen to know that you are really interested in having Jacksonville. I mean, you can hear, it in the name, Art Presence Art Center. It's more than a gallery. And it is really about community education. So let's talk about your thoughts about that.
Well, my plan is ultimately I'd like to be kind of the education director of Art Presence. And by that I mean that we would not only provide workshops and demonstrations and just all sorts of things, but that we would make sure that the community at large is provided with every opportunity to grow. Then we also feel strongly about helping the artists grow. So it's going to be a variety of things that I think we're capable of doing in that classroom. And it's exciting to me that we will soon be making use of it again, because we've had a couple of meetings up there and it seems to work out okay. I taught drawing up there for several occasions, and it was wonderful.
Recently?
So, well, last year, just before the pandemic, we got a grant to teach drawing to adults, and we hired a young lady who taught to children, 3 classes of children that was wildly successful. So those are the kind of things that we're hoping to do for the community.
Wonderful. So I have in my notes the Anne's teaching process, which we're going to go into in a moment. But would you like to talk about wine and watercolor first or after?
Well, wine and watercolor is something that I think I'm going to talk about it first. I've had 3 classes, but I also used my family as guinea pigs, and 9 of them, and did kind of a simple drawing. And I think none of them have really, in fact, so many people have asked me if any of my children have gone into art. My oldest son was editor of his yearbook and the artist for the yearbook, and I think he had talent. I think my youngest son has lots of talent and a real eye for a lot of things, but none of them are interested in developing any of that. But they were wonderful in accommodating me to see how all of this works. So I've had 3 classes since then, and they've been wonderful. 8 one time, 7 another time, and 7 another time. And we have done it here in my studio because we were concerned about the heat in the gallery, but ultimately they will be held in the gallery. We ask you to either bring 5 or 7 of your buddies or best friends. All the supplies will be provided. It's $25 a person. You bring your own wine and appetizers, and it's just a wonderful class.
And how often do you meet?
I'm available every Thursday evening, starting at 5 o'clock.
But I mean, if you set up a class like this is it ongoing?
The class that it's for one evening.
Okay, I see.
It's not a learning class. It's just a fun painting class. Although I have to tell you, I think people learned a lot in all of these.
So somebody asks if you can just come and drink wine and watch.
Did I hear David say that?
I'm not sure if that's, yeah, I think that is actually.
Yeah. Well, I know.
So you're going to be available basically on Thursdays at 5.
Absolutely. And all you have to do is make an appointment with me.
For how long?
I'm hoping to do it indefinitely.
No, I mean in the evening. For how long is the class?
It starts at 5, and we have gone on till about 8 o'clock. But it doesn't have to go on that long.
Okay, so now he's getting serious here. He's saying, pay the fee and attend, so the general public might look on. I'm not so sure that would work real well.
Yeah, I don't know.
We don't need an audience. I don't think.
I don't know that the students or the participants would want an audience.
Of course, it depends. If they bring wine and appetizers, maybe we might let them.
It's interesting though. This last group, I think everybody might have had a glass of wine, but most of all, they were interested in working in the medium and doing what. And I don't want to tell you really too much about it because I want you to experience it.
Okay, well, I'm going to do this. So how do people sign up?
They call me or email me. It's 541-941-7057, or it's Anne at brookewatercolor.com, and we'll set up a time. And I've done it both ways, where a group of strangers, but it seems to work better when it's a group of people you care about and want to have fun with, a birthday party, just a fun evening.
Yes. Art and chat.
Yes. But wine and watercolor.
Wine and art and chat.
Yes.
Type the phone number. All right, David, I will type that phone number in. 541-941-7057.
Correct.
Okay, there you go. Okay, well, now we get into the sort of frosting on the cake of this event tonight, and that is a little few moments. I mean, as much as you want. You have about a half an hour. You could take as much time as you want here to take us through a little tour of how you present your classes and what it is that you give to your students for their creations.
Well, as I say, this isn't, I want you to know it's not something that was in the past. It's something that's going to be ongoing, and I look forward to be doing it again. But I designed a drawing book, and I'd love to have you show that drawing book. It is, the first part of it has 4 pages of watercolor paper. And this is designed for my students initially, because they do their exercises on those first 4 pages of watercolor paper. Mm-hmm. Then I have a sheet that discusses color theory. I have a page that discusses technique. I have a page that discusses different quotes that famous artists have made. Like the first one is from Cézanne, who says, with an apple, I will astonish Paris. And I love that. So, and then the rest of the book is drawing paper collated with tracing paper. The idea is, and do you want to show the drawing of the cherries? The first page that you put a line drawing on, then you put the tracing paper over the top and give it value. And there it is. So you go from, and you're not seeing the underside of it, but the underside of it is just lines. And then I come to the tracing paper, which has a wonderful tooth to it, and you can get almost black, which is 100% of value, and created this design. Then I grid it off, I measure it and grid it off, and do the same thing with the size paper that when I make a decision what size the actual painting is going to be. And it is a classic method. In fact, what was so exciting to me is Gauguin, who is somebody I greatly admire. I got a book of his one time in the library, and he did the exact method of this type of grading in order to create his paintings. And it's an absolutely wonderful classic method of doing it.
And how did you learn this?
I learned it from my father. So, and it's never, in fact, when I've been to major conferences, seminars, and people are doing their drawing on their watercolor paper and struggling and erasing and struggling and erasing.
And ruining the tooth of the paper, right?
Right. And I start out with this drawing and I solve all my problems at this level. It's my recipe. Like Ginna, with you and your wonderful recipes for cooking, this is my recipe for painting. And all my values, everything about it are here, so that I have no problem of where I'm going to go next. Then as far as my color is concerned, I only use 8 colors. And the reason for that, and I studied this very carefully, is because I want my students to be so familiar with those colors that they know exactly where to go when they're painting. And so with those 8 colors inside their drawing book, they have an opportunity to do a color wheel. And I'd like to show that color wheel.
Okay, that'll be just a sec.
Okay. Well, anyway, with those 8 colors, and this is the color wheel up above, and these little expressions, the PAC and the RMG is permanent alizarin crimson and rose madder genuine. Those are the 2 reds that my students use. Aurelian and New Gamboge here down in the yellows, those are the 2 yellows that my students use. Cobalt blue and French ultramarine blue, those are the 2 blues. Now look in the center of this little color wheel. Those are neutrals. Mm-hmm. And what my students learn, they all say, oh gosh, all I ever do is make mud. If you combine all 3 of the primary colors, you can make the most beautiful neutrals in the absolute world. You'll never need a black, you'll never need a brown. I don't use any sedimentary colors, no siennas, no ochres, no umbers. They're all very, very transparent colors, which I've studied over the years. And I was telling a group the other day, I have a dear friend who has a PhD in color theory. PhD. That's how much information there is that you could possibly learn.
Yeah.
And then down below is complements, and that is where, and George Seurat, who was a post-impressionist, he figured this out with his pointillism, that if you put complements side by side, you fool the eye into movement. And that would be like if you put a red down, you take the other 2 complements, which are yellow and blue, and you put them together and there is definite movement. And if you have yellow, you take the other 2 pieces, which are red and blue, which makes purple, and you get that wonderful movement. And
so those are the in your star here, those are complements to each other.
Down below, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I try and talk about that in relation to the fact that if you want to push something forward in your painting, you put the complement behind it, and it will push it forward in the painting. There's all sorts of things you can learn about creating depth in your paintings by using color theory, and it's a very important, powerful place to be to learn about color theory.
Mm-hmm. And do we learn about this in the wine and watercolor?
You do a little bit, yes. What you learn about, and I can't really go into it too much, is negative painting. It's interesting because you've never in your life been taught to think negatively. And all of a sudden you're being asked to never think in the positive, just think in the negative. And that's what these little exercises are all about. So that's all I want to tell you about that. But it's a lot.
Okay. But when one takes the wine and watercolor, obviously we're only doing it for a couple of hours, but in what situation do you use your book? Do you give that to your serious students who are signed up for weeks at a time, or how do you do that?
And my classes are 6 weeks long. They start out with drawing, then and they're for 3 hours each week. Color theory.
With or without wine?
Oh, without wine. It's a good idea, though, Ginna.
Checking.
Yeah, but they. So, and then the last 2 classes, I set up 3 still lifes, and we put into practice those things that we've learned in theory, and spend those last time. So essentially, they take home something that they've accomplished.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic.
Lots of fun.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else.
So your value study.
Oh, yes.
And the rest of the cherries.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
Please.
Forgot about those.
Yeah. So do you want to see the value study now?
Sure, sure.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, and this is the other thing. You can see it in the drawing book. I ask this of my students to be able to take the colors that they have. As I say, we only use 8 colors, and create everything from 10% value to right down to 100%, which would be black. But then I can say to them, when we're looking at a piece of their work, I think you need to add another 20% value to the sky, or I think you need a little bit more value in the shadow, and I would say make it 70%, so we can be on the same page rather than not know what the other person, what I'm thinking or they're thinking. It's it's almost analytical, really. Because you have to be able to communicate with your students in some way so that you can.
Well, and here you see it. It's obvious. Right. You can say 10 or 20%, and you don't have to make it up in your mind.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a lot of water and a little bit of pigment.
Yeah.
On down to a heck of a lot of pigment and little water. All of these colors are permanent. They're not fugitive, which means that they would, in the sun, they would disappear. And some of them are, they're all transparent. You can see right through all of them. But some of them are staining, and I've got the shirts to prove it. So, and that's one thing that's important to consider. So you need to know everything there is to know about the analysis of your colors.
And so in watercolor, what combinations of colors make black?
Green and red. And every one of these colors in the 90-degree level has a little bit of Winsor Newton in it, which is the one green that I have that's very staining, but it will make black. And it's the most beautiful black you ever saw. It's not like something you would pull out of a tube. It's something you create yourself.
Fantastic.
It is. It's wonderful. I can't. There are times when I think I am so darn lucky to be this happy when I'm.
And where if you do a 6 or an 8 week class, where in the class does this come into play? How soon do you get
Color
into
theory
this?
is right up there after drawing, because you've got to be able to understand exactly what these colors are going to do before you get down to the stage where you're going to be applying them, and being totally frustrated because you haven't paid attention to something about color theory. So it's drawing first, and then color theory, and then technique, the many sundry and different ways that you can apply colors. So
talk a little bit about the negative approach.
Okay, so this area in here on my arm is what we call a negative space, and that helps me define the arm just by knowing about that negative space.
You have to lift your arm up a little higher,
okay.
I think, to see.
I don't see myself on here. I don't know.
Yes, I understand.
Okay, so let me see if I can tell it another way. You see in oil painters and acrylicists, pastel artists, and so on, that if they were going to do a field of grasses, that they would be making the grasses. And I'm telling you that what you're going to do is paint behind the grass. In other words, you're going to paint a log or a rock or something like that behind it to create those fronds of grasses. That's called negative painting. And as I say, you're not talking.
So wait, so do you paint around where you think the fronds are going to be? Or you just paint it out?
The whole area, let's say they're going to be green. Paint the whole area green, let it dry, and then I'm going to go behind it with rocks to create, so you can see the fronds coming out of the. I'd have to really demonstrate it,
of course,
for you, but it's very exciting, and it is a transition that that the brain makes, that it's not used to thinking along those lines, because you honestly are never taught to think negatively.
Mm-hmm.
So to think in the negative is totally foreign.
Well, we're in the graphic design and typography and kind of book design world. You have to think about negative because there's a lot of it. And
Really.
well, I mean, there's a lot of white space, and
Oh,
you have to think about how your picture is going to work with all the various negatives that you have
yeah.
in the design.
Well, it's a very exciting process, and I probably use it in every single one of my paintings.
And so, in the cherries, did you do that with negative
No,
painting?
there's nothing negative about the cherries, at least at this point. But the lace that's going to be behind it, I am going to paint the holes in the lace, not the lace.
Can we see the second version of the cherries?
Yeah.
Oh, man behind the curtain. Oh, Oz. Gonna get there in a minute. And so that cherries painting is not finished,
No,
right? So now,
not
okay, so this
finished.
is number 2.
And number 3 is probably it's got a little bit of painting with the lace, and I'm getting into that now as we speak, because I've kind of finished the cherries. And
Yeah, so you can see the lace in the drawing.
Mhm.
Well, not seeing it just yet.
That's the here there 13 is the.
Yeah, number 13. There we go.
So you see what I'm doing here? That's all negative painting. I'm not painting the lace, I'm painting behind it.
Uh-huh.
And you'll see much more of that. You can see the different areas. But I want you to see how I started out with the drawing and the
Yeah.
how you study.
What the heck is that? Heavens. Okay.
Anyway, so you can see exactly how I go about doing it.
Yes. It's totally wonderful. And so, how much more? All these little bits of the in the drawing, all the things that surround this picture, are lacy
Right,
fabric kinds of things here.
right. It'll be like a cloth sitting on a bunch of lace,
Mm-hmm.
and it's quite a good size painting. I notice my arms are getting longer, and when they start dragging on the floor, I'm going to quit painting.
So when you're using the book to teach somebody, does a student do an actual painting in the book after they've set it all up?
They do the drawing, both the line drawing and the value study, and then they make a decision about how big they want that painting.
And that's where the
And
grid comes in.
that's right. That's
Mm-hmm.
right. And it requires a little bit of math. If I've got here, I think 4.5 by 6.5, and so I double that. So it would be 9 by 13, and then I may add 4.5 by 6.5 to that to get it even a little larger. But the point is the ratio is the same.
Mm-hmm.
And you could have a cherry that's going to eat New York or something like that. It'd be so big. But
Mm-hmm.
it requires a little bit of math. But then what you do is you take every square and you put in that square what is in the smaller square.
Yeah.
Here, and it happens so fast you can't believe it. So.
Yeah. I learned about this in art school, but how I learned it was I took the famous painting, I can't remember the scent, it was 4711 or something, where you took that famous picture of the woman draped over the piano bench. It's a very famous painting, and I took that painting as my part of my plan, and captured just like fabric and the of her dress and the stool.
Oh, oh, how great.
And I used the grid and I blew it way up, and it was one of those little round stools with the padding on it, and you can just
Yeah.
kind of see her flowing dress. I forget the painting, but I blew the whole thing up, and I did everything that you were talking about here, and used my grid and blew it all up, and I ended up calling it the hamburger because the stool took over everything, and it truly did look like a hamburger. And so I thought, well, there must be more to this than well.
Well, it's a good exercise to do that.
It
to
was
take a portion
it's
of
very
it
good.
and blow it up and make an abstract out of it. Make
And
it
I took
abstract painting.
Tibetan Tonka painting for a couple of years, and the entire process is based on a very, very specific grid. And of course, the Buddhists, it's referred to as sacred geometry because, of course, everything is based on 5 basic shapes. But you basically take the head of the Buddha, and then when you get really good at it, you take the whole body of the Buddha and you create this incredibly intricate graph like this, and you follow it specifically every time for years before you are left, before you can sort of put your own stamp on it a little bit. But it's based on exactly the same thing. And so really what we're doing here is artistic sacred geometry.
It's a classic method of doing it, and that's why it really makes me so happy when I can teach people this, because they struggle so hard to start a drawing on their paper. And I insist that my students use the very, very best paper, the very best watercolor, and so on. And that's because if you use student grade anything, you are adding to your frustration. So it's hard to think that if you were putting it all on paper initially without having a grid, it's a struggle.
Right.
Because the thing that attracts you to painting, to still lifes or whatever, are the shadows. And shadows change over time. So if you're trying to get it on paper, not doing a drawing, you're lost.
Yeah. It's just wonderful. So we have 4 or 5 minutes here. I guess what I'd really like to know is what would you tell an incoming student to, how would you make somebody feel at home in your class to say, this is what I'm going to share with you, and these are the basics of what you need to know?
Well, I feel pretty darn strongly that if you want this, you can have it. And I always kind of poo-poo the idea, oh, I can't draw, and it's that you've been doing other things, and you have not thought in these ways, or you're giving up your ability to see by just taking pictures, and then you get those pictures home and they don't mean what they meant when you were looking at the 3-dimensional shaded item that you were attracted to.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I approach it with, if they've come to me, there is interest there, and there is commitment, and I want to show them that if they have those things, there's no reason why they can't do it.
So do you think that people who say, well, I can't draw a straight line, that they might be able to do something with this?
Absolutely. And my father's method of drawing, which again is a very classical method of drawing, I think everybody who has that aha moment of all of a sudden getting it, it's because you've allowed yourself to really look at something. Everybody says, oh, I know where the eyes go, and I know where the nose is, and I know where the mouth is. And I've looked at that face forever, and I know all about it. I have to tell you, I wanted to do paintings of my boys for my husband for Father's Day. And I did it, the drawings initially, and then I said, go away. I've looked at your faces forever. And I will be darned if I have to bring them back individually and work with them. I hadn't really paid enough attention to these faces and these expressions and whatever. It's one thing that if you, well, you absolutely have to do. You relearn your ability to see.
It's all about seeing.
Yes. Yes.
All about seeing. Wow. Well, thank you so much. I really, really love talking to you because I always learn something.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, thank you all for coming, and we really appreciate being with you, and we
Thank you
appreciate
all for
you.
coming.
Thank you.